15th and 16th. For details, go to grandparkla.org. And in the new year, if you're looking for a great big adventure, the Greater Los Angeles Zoo Association is inviting those interested to its adventure to Botswana, escorted by LA Zoo Director John Lewis. This wildlife safari is planned for May 29th to June 8th, with options to extend the trip beforehand or afterwards. This amazing journey begins in Johannesburg with the day spent exploring the city. You then travel to Botswana, where your adventure includes visiting the Okavango Delta and the Linyanti Wildlife Reserve. Go to lazoo.org for all the details and cost of this once-in-a-lifetime adventure. And that's a look at some upcoming things to do. Bring out the cake and party favors. Griffith Park lovers couldn't help but celebrate the park's recent birthday. Anna Marcos was there and brings us the story from the top of the mountain.
It's the kind of place hand-holding couples love. Hikers like it, and runners like it too. Now there's another reason to celebrate Griffith Park. Its 118th birthday. And that makes cake lovers like these fans of the park as well.
Yeah, how's the cake?
Good.
What's it taste like?
Chocolate blueberry.
Oh, that sounds yummy. Is it yummy?
Yeah.
I hike in this park since 1978. Every morning I see a different sunrise and meet people from around the world. And it's the only thing that gets my mind right.
Number one Griffith Park fan Tom LaBonge led the festivities, joined by residents and other Griffith Park regulars, all praising the features that make this 4,200-acre park so unique.
Within it, we have areas of wilderness, we have golf courses, we have this fabulous observatory, the Greek Theater. There's nothing like it in the nation or in the world.
25 years ago, I started riding in this park. I couldn't believe what I saw. I could not believe that there was a place like this in the center of Los Angeles.
And leave it to the science guy at Griffith Observatory to fill us in on the park's cosmic facts.
Griffith Park, since its birth on the 16th of December, 1896, has traveled 526 billion miles around the center of the Milky Way galaxy, and yet is still the center of Los Angeles.
The only sad note was remembering the big fire that threatened the park in 2007. But even that had its lighter side.
Tom LaBonge put us in this big car, and he drove through Griffith Park, Indiana Jones style, with flames coming over the car and just driving through fearlessly. We're all holding on to the seats, white knuckles.
The park bounced back, bigger and better than ever, thanks in part to the fierce firefighting and rebuilding efforts of its diehard supporters.
If it wasn't for Griffith Park, LA would be just another city in the desert.
Here's to the oldest and likely the most beautiful city park in the country. Happy 118th birthday, Griffith Park. I'm Anna Marcos for LA This Week.
Councilmember Tom LaBonge is working to get a new iPhone app that will give you information on the park and its trails, and may even work to help track hikers who are lost or in trouble in the park's wilderness. That's going to do it for this edition. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ellen Chang. A reminder that you could catch us online at lacityview.org. You can also follow and like us on Facebook. We'll see you back here next week for more of LA This Week.
I got you something very special for our first anniversary. Now close your eyes. Surprise! It's an emergency preparedness kit. Isn't it great? It's got food, water, first aid kit, and this neat emergency tool for shutting off utilities. Honey, we are going to be prepared for any emergency. Honey? Sweetie, I have one more surprise. This really cool cranking flashlight.
Get the message? Be prepared.
Psst, hey, buddy. You with the stupid hat. Come here. Closer. No parking! Do you know what happens when you park illegally on these narrow hillside streets? You block the street so emergency vehicles can't pass. Each year, homes are destroyed and lives are lost because of drivers like you who park illegally. And you know what else? You can get a citation. And you can be towed.
Help us get to the emergency. The life we save just might be yours.
How'd you know?
The ball called.
Hey, look out for the pothole.
G'day, Troy McCubbin from North Hollywood. You're watching LA City View, Channel 35, our city, our channel.
Good morning. Shh. Good morning. Today is January 10th. I almost took a month away from everybody. But welcome to your Los Angeles City Council meeting. This council meets every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. The public, all is welcome. Madam Clerk, I believe we have a quorum. Could you please call the roll?
Blumenfield, Bonin, Buscaino, Cedillo, Englander, Fuentes, Huizar, Carrasco, Coin, Labange, Martinez, O'Farrell, Parks, Price, Wesson. 10 members present, a quorum, Mr. President.
First order of business.
Approval of the minutes.
Mr. O'Farrell moves. Labange seconds. Next.
Committee to resolutions for approval.
Englander moves. Huizar seconds. Next.
Mr. President, before we begin, there is a request to continue item 1D to January 24th and items 3 and 5 to January 14th.
Okay, without objection, that'll be the order. And it's my understanding that there's a request to continue 1A for 30 days. And if so, what date would that bring us to?
February 11th.
Okay, so without objection, that'll be the order. Now, if we can continue to go through today's agenda.
Items 1 and 2 are items noticed for public hearing. There are cards on both items.
Okay, then we'll hold those items. Next.
Item 4 is an item for which public hearing has not been held. 10 votes required for consideration.
Okay, without objection, that item will now be before us. Do we have
that item
cards?
Is the presentation. Yes, there are cards.
Okay, what else do we have?
Mr. President, that takes council to presentations or items called special.
Okay, because we have a special meeting, but that we can't start that until 5 or 6 minutes. Okay, Mr. Huizar, are you ready with your presentation? Okay, at this point in time, we want to... Mr. Huizar, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, and colleagues and public. It's my great pleasure today to introduce you to an organization and an initiative in Boyle Heights that has been going on for some time now that I think is one of the most important things this country can be doing. It speaks about our young people and our efforts to get more of our young people involved in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, areas that we commonly call STEM. Now, we all know how important it is for us to improve the educational outcomes of our young people, not only in Los Angeles, but in the country. But when it comes to focusing on those areas that we should be focusing on, STEM is one of them. Compared to other countries in the world, the United States is not preparing as many students as it should in these fields. And we have with us some individuals who are working on that in one of the areas of this city that perhaps we are preparing our future leaders of this country. I say that because when you look at where most of our young people are being prepared for the future of this country, it is in communities like Boyle Heights, low-income Latino or African-American communities where a majority of our young people are in our urban schools. And so that's why it's my great pleasure to recognize great minds in STEM as they celebrate their 25th anniversary. There are not enough qualified graduates, that, as I mentioned, in these areas that will we ever meet to meet the demands in the field. STEM, great minds in STEM have been doing this for 25 years. They started in 1989 at a conference known as HENAC, and that the HENAC works to identify, honor, and document the contributions of outstanding Hispanic Americans in science, technology, engineering, and math. They have been working for a very long time to get more Latinos involved in these fields, and through that arose the Great Minds in STEM initiative. They will tell you more in detail about this, but let me tell you that for us in Boyle Heights, they have been a godsend as we have opened the minds of many more young people about the possibilities that they can explore. They've partnered up with leading national corporations, government agencies, academic institutions, the military, and the local business community to deliver their mission statement to help increase Latino participation in STEM fields both locally and across the nation. Their commitments to STEM education goes beyond just instruction. They also provide financial assistance through scholarships. Throughout their tenure, they've awarded millions in scholarships to students pursuing STEM degrees at colleges and universities. So with that, let me introduce to you a person who introduced this idea to me when I was on the Board of Education, and we worked along with the Congresswoman Lucille Roybal Allard and also the Navy or the Army? Who was it? Army Corps of Engineers to help bring this program to Boyle Heights. Let me introduce you to Ray Melado, Chairman and Founder of Great Minds in STEM. Welcome, Ray.
Thank you. We are so pleased to be here, Mr. President and Councilman, and each of the councilmen here of our great city of LA. As you know, we're in a STEM revolution. This will be the jobs and the economy for the rest of this century. And it is incumbent upon all of us to work with our students, our parents, and our teachers to prepare them for this future and enter our community colleges and universities to get prepared to be part of our 21st century economy here in the city of LA. We need the city of LA to be a leadership city in this area. As you know, and as the councilman already mentioned, we have various programs, and right now we have 20,000 students in the Boyle Heights area in a connected STEM value chain leading up to our universities. We work with the Cal State system, we work with the UC system, we work with our federal agencies as well as our state agencies. And so together we need to continue to partnership to continue preparing our community on the value of a STEM education. And so I'm reaching out to each of you here in the city of LA, and we want to continue to work with you to help prepare our families and our community for a STEM future. And again, on behalf of the Board of Directors and our staff, which is here, we want to say thank you very much. We are so proud of this honor. Thank you.
No, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Ray. And personally, I want to thank you, Ray, because of your enthusiasm, perseverance, and always so focused on making sure that young people have what they need in the Boyle Heights community through this initiative. You, because of your efforts and all the team, this has been possible. I do want to introduce the other members of the team who are here today. Dr. Gary Cruz, thank you for being with us. Berta Aro, Lupe Munoz Alvarado, Cecilia Mercado, Monica Villafana, Ernesto Preciado, Mike McClure, and the board and staff. On behalf of the City of Los Angeles and the Boyle Heights community and the 20 schools that you work with from elementary to high school, we want to congratulate you on your 25th year anniversary and also to thank you for the work you have been doing in Boyle Heights. Congratulations.
Thank you. Tony?
Step through here, go to the back, take some photos. Thank you, Mr. President. Y adelante.
Thank you, Mr. Huizar. And before I call on Mr. Labange, I want the cameras. I have a very special visitor with us today. Cameras, can we get Penny in the shot? Now, I'm going to... yeah, you can go, I'm going to call up Mr. Labange, but I want everybody to know that in a few minutes, we will be finding a new home for Penny. So, Penny, I want you to smile and look at everyone. She is a mixed Chihuahua Beagle or a Chihuahua Beagle mix, and she's 2 months old. So I just wanted to prime you for Penny. She will be coming your way shortly with that. Now, if you want to adopt her right now, please come right on. We have a 100% adoption rate, and we'd like to keep it that way. Mr. O'Farrell, I know you may need someone to help you bless the new house or the new area. So I just want you to know, and if you want it, I'll pay for it. With that said, Mr. Labange, the floor is yours. Let's give a hand to Tom Labange.
Mr. President, I'm joined with the great captain of Olympic Division, Tony Nieto, because we have some very special guests here today. She's here also giving great words of advice and leadership. Please welcome the Junior League of Los Angeles. Please stand and be recognized. Right here, they have their day in City Hall. The leaders of Los Angeles and contributors to greatness. Captain, you want to say something?
Council President, thank you for the opportunity to show the ladies of the leaders behind us the great work that the City Council and the City of Los Angeles does. Councilman LaBonge, thank you for bringing the group in, and thank you for supporting the Olympic Division. Can I get some more officers?
We'll work on that. Thank you, Captain. Good. Go back and patrol the streets. All right. Hey,
Mr. LaBonge, she made a request of you, so I'm going to make you the point man on that request.
I'll get it. I'll do it. For Olympic Division, Gil Cedillo supports it 1,000% too as well. But speaking of the streets of Los Angeles and the streets of Southern California, I'm here today to stand and call to honor one of the great ones in our local television industry. Please welcome Kent Schochtik. Kent Schochtik Day in the city of Los Angeles. And Kent, would your wife Karen join you as well? And Susie, come on up here. Rich, come up here right now. His team. Kent Schochtik, as you know, is one of our longest-serving anchors in Los Angeles, if not the longest. He was born in Berkeley, California. Came down, Tom, I want to hear this over there, Tom. Came down and went to USC, a great member of the University of Southern California, where he graduated with a BA in journalism. His first assignment was out there in the central part of the country in Sioux City, Iowa. Following a 3-year stint, he went down and worked in Orlando and worked at the Space Center as a reporter. In 1986, Kent was a startup television morning news program called Today in L.A. on KNBC. And over that course of time, Kent was the one who was breaking the news right to us long before they said breaking news. When we had our tragedy of the 92 riots, the O.J. Simpson trial, as well as the storms and earthquakes that shook the studio while he was on the air. Very famously, he was one of the first to teach the drop drill live on television when there was a little quake where he hit underneath the anchor's desk, and we all remember that because Kent's real. He lives in Pasadena, California, with his wife, Karen, a wonderful person who's involved with many things. From KNBC, he moved over to KCBS, which was KNXT, I think, at the time. And then for many years, they started the morning program. And members, you got to know nowadays, the morning news is where a lot of our constituents get their information. In the old days, and I'm the old guy around here now, it used to be Jerry Dunphy at night, and then Paul Moyer at night, and Hal Fishman and George Putnam at night, and that was it. And the night news, they don't always catch until they market it and put Kent on it again, where he came out of the shadows of the morning program into now to deliver the news for KCAL, Channel 29, as I like to call it, but it's Channel 9 on the heart, as he works right there. He has a radio program also with KNX. It is a voice on KNX, which is their sister radio station. His work has won 8 regional Emmy Awards, 2 for the Press Club of Los Angeles, a Golden Mike, on and on and on that he has done that. And he's made impact because he's a sound voice of the community. And when I talked to Kent over the holidays there, and I saw that he went, because I used to see him bright and early there at 4:30 in the morning. All of a sudden, he's on in the evening hour at 10 o'clock at night, and also earlier as it is. I said, God, how's it feel to flip your job so much? And he told me it's finally first time I slept in since last century, of all this time there. So, Ken, on behalf of my colleagues of the City Council, on behalf of Mayor Garcetti, on behalf of your colleagues in the industry, I want to salute you for all your work here, over 30 years, and continued service to Los Angeles with breaking news and good news and the work that you do outside, charitable work that you do for all. You're truly an angel in the city. Let's hear it for Kent Schochtik. Okay. Good job there. And before, if I could, Mr. President, Susie, I want you to say a few words, and Rich, I want you to give us the weather.
So I'll do the weather, and Rich will... It's such an honor to be here, not only because he is my friend and my dear colleague, but also because he deserves this recognition, truly. To be able to give Southern California viewers, our wonderful viewers here in Los Angeles, such an amazing voice, an amazing talent for years, who I have admired for years as well. It's such an honor to sit next to Ken Schaknecht every night, and such an honor to be here today. Congratulations, my friend, my dear colleague. So excited for you today.
Good job.
And how appropriate that on the day that Kent gets this proclamation that it's sunny and warm, daytime highs in the 70s today. It's fantastic. A Chamber of Commerce Day, right, Tom?
That's it. This is what makes the City of Angels special. But what it makes more special is the people who work in front and behind the cameras, informing the citizens of Los Angeles that it is a great place, that it does have great challenges, but those challenges can be solved when people work together. So Ken Schaknecht, I love you. I love your wife, Karen. On behalf of my colleagues on the City Council, especially on behalf of my wife, Bridget, who I dearly love, and we know you guys. Let's hear it for Ken Schaknecht again.
Mr. Labange, okay, before we start, I do have another speaker on the queue, and it's fortunate for me that today would be Pet Adoption Day because there was a regular segment on your program. I think it was on Fridays, and I have with me Arlene from our state. Come here. Come on. Arlene here, get her, not me. Arlene here was our representative that would go to the show, and she just showed me several videos of her. So it was obviously very important to you, but I want you to know that she came especially on this day because she loved it. She said that your crew and you're a phenomenal guy, and I'm hoping with you here to be luck and we can keep our 100% dog adoption rate alive. Mr. Gilbert Cedillo.
Well, just let me join the Love Fest here. Kent, thank you for what you do. We know it's a business, but we also know that it's a public service, and you bring with your credibility, and Susie, a sense of confidence, particularly when the city has to grapple with challenges, with crisis. It's your calming voice as you communicate to the public that really is a public service, and we all thank you for that.
Mr. Labange, the show is yours.
First of all, the reason that we have a 100% adoption rate for the pets is in large part because of what you folks are doing. And it's a tough act to follow a dog or a child, but thank you for the setup. I appreciate it. Me here today with no teleprompter, but it's okay because the executive producer of our primetime newscasts, Mr. Rick Brown, is right here, and it's in his DNA makeup that at about the 90-second mark he will start wrapping me up.
Let's give Rick a round of applause. We're going to kiss up to the boss.
My sincere thanks to Councilman Labange and to the entire City Council. I stand here today with a mixture of pride and humility and confusion because I have to tell you, when you read a proclamation that says dedicated service, typically that indicates some sort of sacrifice. And I think as this storied body knows as well as any, if not more so, there's no real sacrifice when you are working in the greatest city in the greatest region in the world. It was 30 years ago that I stood right over there where my friend Patrick Healy now stands today with then Mayor Tom Bradley saying, "Is your traffic plan really going to work for these upcoming Summer Olympics?" And he said, "You just watch what Angelenos do." He was right. And since that day, I have learned never to be surprised, but always to be inspired by the greatness that is the characterization of the people of this city. Before wildfires, they help neighbors to safety. During riots, they sweep up broken glass from the sidewalks. And after earthquakes, they get bridges and overpasses rebuilt, not in months or in years, but in weeks. And I get to tell the story of all of them. People like Sweet Alice Harris, who makes sure that everybody gets a toy at Christmas. And the Midnight Mission, which opens its doors to hundreds every single day. Los Angeles is the best place in the world. And it's made also so because of wonderful coworkers like Susie Suh, who is as talented and professional as she is glamorous and modest. She didn't want me to introduce her today, but I will point out that he who has the microphone has the power. Rich Fields, who makes the exact same weather 300 days out of the year seem interesting at 8 and 10 every night on KCAL 9, my good friend. And the person who makes it most worthwhile of all for the last 21 years, who saw me off when my alarm clock went off at 2:55 in the morning, who now waits up for me when I get home from the primetime shows at 11:30 at night, who sends me off to lunch with a little brown bag every day and a healthy turkey wrap and a note in it, all while managing her own day job of 100 people in a collision repair industry right in the heart of Los Angeles. In terms of years alone, 21/30ths of this proclamation belong to my beautiful wife, Karen Scheib. Members of the council, I know you take your challenges very seriously, and so I am genuinely honored that today you would take some time and allow the city to take some time to let me stand here. I genuinely am honored. Thank you so much.
Ken Sharkey.
Again, congratulations. If I could call on Mr. Englander.
All right, I believe that this is the moment for this presentation that everybody in council chambers has gathered for today, the most important piece of business before us. And I turn that over to Mr. Wesson at the podium. Thank you.
Mr. President, okay, now, I don't care if you show me on television, but we have to show Penny. So
we need you to zoom in on
her, not me.
On her, yes, absolutely.
And this is very important because what I'm trying to do, what we always try to do here at the City of Los Angeles, is the right thing. And the right thing for us to do is to try to save lives of our four-legged friends. And this is a young, again, Beagle Chihuahua mix, and searching for a home. She's 2 months old. I think we do the best we can in trying to find homes for our companion animals. But the reality of the situation is, if we are not successful, then she could lose her life. And I'm asking you to save a life. I'm asking you to get a companion animal that will be mad at you when you're good. Not mad at you when you're good, but pleased with you when you're good. Pleased with you when you're bad. If you're looking for unconditional love, this is what you get it from, a little baby like this. So those of you that are watching us on television, again, this is Penny searching for a home. Those of you that are in the council chambers, let me have you take Penny home with you. She's ready to go. She's had her shots, and she's looking for some stability. So with that said, again, let's save her life. Let's find her a home. We at the city have a 100% adoption rate where it relates to our dogs. We are in a fierce competition with the County of Los Angeles that also has a 100% adoption rate. So I ask you, if you're watching this from your offices or listening on council phone or whatever, please come down and adopt Penny. Penny will be here with Arlene. Come on, Arlene, who you met earlier. Arlene will be here with Penny, and hopefully, if you're interested, they'll be in the back. Please let us know. So with that said, let's see if we can find Penny a home. You may want to show Penny to some of
I think Jack
our
Humberville
guests.
is interested, Mr. President,
Okay,
in
find
bringing
me
Penny home, or
find
Austin
me
Buettner here, David
a
Fleming,
father
maybe.
or a mother.
Yes.
Now,
There's
maybe
a lot of interest here.
Maybe we'll give it to Tom Sales from USC.
There we go. Where's Tom? I know I saw him earlier.
It's between him or George Plow.
All right, thank you very much. And if we can, throughout the rest of the meeting, we'll keep bringing her to the camera. She'll be in the back if anybody wants to visit with her as well. And Mr. Buettner, I know your wife loves animals as well, so feel free to come check her out. Thank you, Mr. President.
I want to thank Mr. Englander, President Pro Tem of the Los Angeles City Council. Well done. Madam Clerk, where are we on today's agenda?
Item 1, call special for cards.
You know what I'd like to do is let's go to the presentation, which I believe is item 4. So do we have cards on item 4? We do. So if you can just keep your seats, I'll call up the general public comment cards. We'll start with Mr. Sachs. Arno, if you could start making your way up. We then go to Batman, and from Batman we go to John Walsh. Please come forward. 4, item 4. Come on, nobody's moving, so I'm going to go Wayne from Encino. Let's come on up. Okay, Mr. Sachs, Happy New Year and welcome.
Same to you, sir. Thank you very much. Fascinating. The item on your agenda mentions a time for truth. And if you look at the newspaper articles that came out before the discussion of this article, this item in your agenda, blistering report has little good to say about the city of L.A. Editorial in the L.A. Times, how grim is L.A.'s future? Yet you just had a presentation for a media personality who mentioned that this is the greatest city in the world. Well, you have a commission that just put these reports out that said this city is circling the toilet. How can it be? The problem is, and it deals with the media, is this rosy picture that is painted while, again, the city circles the toilet. This is a story also from the newspaper, and this is probably just a little blurb, but a major problem. Macy's expects higher profits will cut jobs. What program you got in mind that'll fight that kind of mentality? Macy's expects higher profits will cut jobs. By the way, if this commission is so good at pointing out the details, maybe they should be included in the new negotiations that you have for the contracts with the city unions, that nobody in government at the city council level and the mayor's office seem to know we're going also in the toilet. But keep this in mind. Macy expects higher profits will cut jobs. There's an oxymoron right there. That's the problem that you need to address. That's the problem the public needs to keep in the staple to their forehead, because that's the problem we have.
Thank you. Okay, next.
What is unsustainable reform on an agenda for the Los Angeles economy? Blame it all on these elected officials, because the Cantor Commission pointed out your ridiculous, offensive, bad government, says Batman today. Why? For poor leadership, because that's what they do. They do not consider difficult issues, lack of ethics, and prevalence of dishonest practice. Dishonest practice. Blame goes out to you for the city budget. The economy reflects how you badly failed the challenge by elected officials to ignore the physical crisis you put the city of Los Angeles in. All of you taxpayers, all you tax rate payers, you in Los Angeles are paying for the ignorance and the power trip of this council to not financially gain a grip on the budget. That's what the whole issue is here today. Response there's no financial footing. Why? because local government spending and raises are out of control at the price of all of you tax holders, all of you Angelinos. Los Angeles is facing the economic crisis, an economic decline, and the challenge to assess homelessness, poverty, and provide public service. Both state and federal are abused by your actions. All of you are responsible. You sound loud, Herman, calm down. Yes, because among a list of growing problems, the second largest city has failed all of you Angelinos. And all you kids that are on the streets today, homeless, and all you Americans who are homeless, blame it on this council. They effed up, waste, fraud, and abuse by elected public officials.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Walsh, followed by Wayne from Encino.
John
Please
Walsh,
come
blogging
forward.
at HollywoodHighlands.org. For the information of the Commission, 25-year retired teacher at LAUSD, former Peace Corps volunteer, 2 years in Africa. We have a distinguished guest. Now, they have these long shots, Mr. Cantor, Secretary Cantor, so that we can't see my face. If they had a close-up, you would see that Mr. Cantor is sitting at my left hand. Thank you. Right on report. In fact, when the mayor saw the report, Garcetti, he's repeatedly said, thrown it away and said, who wrote this damn thing, John Walsh? I mean, that's how bad these in decline. Our city is in decline. We have the highest rate of unemployment of any city in America. Did you hear that up there? Here? No, you heard it from Mickey Cantor. You heard it from him. Now, what we want, Mr. Cantor, is 90 days you're going to give us a prescription on what to do. I'm asking you to hold a public hearing in this hall, not at 10 o'clock in the morning where people who aren't retired can't come, and have the public come here and give you ideas. Because up here, all they're interested in is getting the gadfly squashed. You gave, Mr. Cantor, and Mr. Buettner, the driving force, you gave the city council and the mayor a good, deserved spanking. They couldn't sit down for a day. Now we're going to have a public hearing on this. As I said to you, Mr. Cantor, earlier when you were here and on the record, I will give you $50 to your favorite charity if the meeting started on time. The meeting started 10 minutes late, and it's very poorly attended. This is, as you didn't mention in your report, the highest paid city council on the planet Earth, except for the city council of Baghdad, and they're all crooks. HollywoodHighlands.org for all the information. Viva Cantor Commission! Viva HollywoodHighlands.org for the truth.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. If we could get Wayne from Encino and Brian Barajas.
All right.
Go forward.
I read the commission report. You don't need all those words. I can sum it up in 2 words. City sucks. Now, you want solutions? Ron Nichols, give him a hand. He resigned. I'm asking you today, all 15 members, some of you didn't show up today, will the City Council of Los Angeles take Ron Nichols' lead and tender your resignations today?
Stay on the subject. That's not
it is
what this
exactly,
is about.
because it's a solution.
Wait. I'm not going to play a game with you today.
Solution.
All right, thank you, Brian. Come forward. Stay on the subject. Sergeants, help him find his seat. Brian, come forward. No. You're going to find your seat. Sergeants, come on. I'm not playing around. Brian, come on forward. Spindler, sit down. Brian, come forward. No, anyway, I'm not going to I'll clear the chambers. Brian, come on. Okay, show him. I think maybe he needs a timeout. Brian?
Can you, thanks. All right, look, I'll just stick to the subject of this report. That is, I haven't read it, but I was informed just recently. But it indicates the severity nature of the collapse of civilization that I've been speaking to. A lot of people want to blame city councils, the representatives, but first of all, they have to understand that what happened in Detroit, just like what's happening in Los Angeles, is nothing other than Wall Street swindles of interest rate swaps and everything else. It's a swindle game. everybody in that game are suckers. And we have to stop ourselves from being suckered into these damn fictitious values of so-called Wall Street's debts. The reason, now let me make a more towards the intention of this. The very fact that we are not the only ones in this mess, you have to understand, it's a collapse. It's a fraud. It's Wall Street. This is the problem. It makes everybody attack each other. It makes everybody fools. We are not fools. When I say we are Americans, when I say we want Glass-Steagall, that means we're going to shut down and bankrupt these bastards. Wall Street. It makes citizens attack each other and they forget about their humanity towards one another. Now, in order to change the city council or any representatives, it's very simple. You have to embody the principle of justice. When you do that, you can actually organize a city, you can organize everybody. Because if that does not happen, we are in a collapse, and this will trigger thermonuclear World War III.
Okay, thank you. That's the last, Madam Clerk, public comment card on this item. If I could ask Mr. Cantor and Buettner and the commission to come forward. We have 5 seats there. We'll gladly give you some more if you think you need them.
We do. We have good attendance today, Mr. President.
Please, we've got 2 more chairs, and we can bring more. Let's find a seat for Tyler. I saw him trying to just be cool and laid back. Oh, yeah, we definitely need you up here. We need one more seat. Labange has it. Here comes your seat. Anyway, members, I think it was last March, late February or March, I had discussions with Mr. Cantor. I talked about wanting to have an independent commission give the city some recommendations how we deal with our financial situation. There were a couple of things that we agreed upon. We wanted an independent committee. We wanted a diverse committee. This committee is diverse, independent, has Republicans, has Democrats, has labor, has business. And we appreciate the work that you've done, and I'd like for you to present your findings to the rest of the council, and council know that within 90 days, I mean, a lot of the concerns that they've mentioned we already know, but the key for us is what are the solutions, and that list of suggestions should come to us in approximately 90 days. Mr. Cantor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Wesson, and thank you for asking me to do this, I think. I'm never quite sure, but this has been a long process, longer than we thought it would take to come out with our first report. The second will be done within 90 days. Let me introduce members of the commission who are here. I think everyone in the horseshoe and everyone here know each other, but I'll do it anyway. Tyler Eisen, Ron Miller, David Fleming, Austin Buettner, George Pla, Antonio Hernandez. And Norm Emerson, our executive director, is somewhere back here. There's Norm. This commission, I am proud to be part of this, has enormous experience, as you know, President Wesson, in this city. Each have headed organizations over the years to try to deal with many different things in LA, and have been tremendously successful in business and labor and in nonprofits. But we all came together unanimously on the report that you've seen. Now, let me make sure I say a couple of things about this. First of all, we are all in this together. A lot of people say this is about the council. It's about the mayor. It's about the city attorney. It's about the controller. No, sir. It's about all of us. We all have a responsibility, and we all have not met all of our responsibilities. It's a great city. It can be greater. And you, all of you, we respect tremendously. You're working on this every day. Most of us have worked with you on other things. And so we need to come together because it is our collective responsibility. Second of all, some good things have been done. Let's not, I said this Wednesday, Mr. President Wesson, and I want to cite a few good things because people walk away saying everything's awful. No, it's not. But we have challenges. Let me talk about the good things. Let me talk about pension reform, which is the council had taken up and has dealt with. Let me talk about the port, the airport, the convention center, a commission on elections. You have begun to address these problems, and I give you great credit for that. But you did not ask me to do this to be a cheerleader, and that's not what I'm going to be and not what Austin and the rest of us are going to be. Our job is to say, here's what we see are difficulties, here's what we see are prescriptions, and then it's up to you to make decisions as to what we have said, what makes sense, what doesn't, and what you want to do. And we respect you for that. But again, we're not cheerleaders. It's some tough words in this report. We believe in every one of them. It's all about facts, except for the first, 2 paragraphs maybe, and for the last 2 paragraphs, everything is fact. And so therefore, you can draw different conclusions, but I don't think anyone can argue with what we checked them backwards and forwards, up and down to make sure we came up with the right facts, or the correct facts. Let me make just a couple of comments, and I want to turn it over to Austin Beutner, because I think it's important to note this is about jobs. A few years ago, over the last few years, about 10, we've had 1 million new residents or additional residents net in the city of LA. We've lost 169,000 jobs. That's a fact. It's a problem. We have about 40% of our residents living in misery. 28% earn an income that's below the poverty line. About almost 12% are unemployed. 40% in misery. We have almost the lowest unemployment rate of any big city in the United States of America. This is Los Angeles, almost the lowest. Our clearance rate for LAPD is down. Our response rate for LA Fire Department is not as good as it was and is below the national standard. Now, this is not to say our police officers or our firefighters are not doing the job. Frankly, we have budget woes which you are much more aware of than I am. Are we trimming our trees? Are we fixing our sidewalks? Are we doing something about our streets which are in sad repair? The answer is no, because of the budget problems that we face. We face deficit after deficit after deficit. It's structural, and it'd be very nice to avoid this and to go on as if it's not happening and to keep filling the hole with budget gimmicks and with one-time revenues. But please, work with us on this. Don't do that. Let's talk, I'm going to say one more thing, and Austin, I'd like you to take it on pension reform. People believe when we talk about pension reform, we're trying to hit those who are in need of these pensions or have the right to these pensions. We're trying to protect them. If we don't do something, those of our hardworking civil servants, police officers, firefighters, are not going to have what they deserve when they retire. The numbers are there. It's only arithmetic. Look, I'm no genius, but I can count and I can add and subtract. That's all you have to do, Mr. LaBonge, is add and subtract, and you find out we've got a problem. So work with us. We're going to take 90 days. One more thing. Please, we want to talk to each of you individually if we can. We'd like to know what you think. You sit here every day. You know much more about this than we do. Please come to us. We'll come to you. Give us ideas. We'll try to consolidate them into something that makes sense and that's helpful to you. Austin?
Thank you, Mickey. Thank you all for allowing us to share with you our work.
Introduce yourself just for the record.
I'm Austin Butner. Thank you, Councilman. Met a few of you before. To put this in proper context, as Mickey said, the report is about 20 pages. The first 3 paragraphs are the collective opinions of the members of this commission. The last 3 paragraphs are the collective opinions and words of this commission. The 18 pages in between are fact. There's an old adage, you don't drown when you fall in the water, you fall when you don't get out. And we divided our work into 2 parts. First, to set forth in a candid way where we are. We're in the water. We're treading water. We have all the makings to be a great city of the 21st century. There is no more diverse city. We're the window to Asia and Latin America. We lead the nation and the country and the world in progressive views on immigration, individual rights, and things that matter. But we've got to put all those tools to work to succeed. We've got to change the way we do things. This is the start. Stay tuned for the sequel. Within 90 days, we hope to deliver a set of concrete recommendations. We won't attempt to solve everything, nor does this report attempt to talk about everything in Los Angeles, but we hope it's a series of concrete steps, some of which this body may wish to act on. Again, it's been our privilege really to come together as a group. It's been an interesting experience for me. The diversity and the breadth of this group is not a group that necessarily gathers regularly in Los Angeles, and we have come together unanimously to issue these findings, and it's been interesting from the far left to the far right, top to bottom, on what we have to say, and I think it's been an eye-opener for all of us. So we look forward to the next part of our work. We thank you for taking the time to recognize it today. We hope you all had a chance to review it, which will make for more informed conversation when we talk about the recommendations. With that, President Wesson, I think we would be delighted, any of us, to answer questions or comments from all of your colleagues.
Okay, thank you. Before we go into that, I do want to say, again, thank you for, giving your time. And I also want to inform council members that Dave Fleming was on the LA 2000 Commission when these problems were first discussed in 1988, and he's now serving on this commission, and it is my hope that you will not have to serve on the one that might occur 20 years from now. With that said, Mr. Englander.
Great, thank you very much. And as a council president pro tem, I wanted to stand up and thank you, Mr. President, for putting this commission together, and thank you to the commissioners for taking the time. I don't want to sugarcoat it and say that we've done a lot of great things. There's a lot of work to do. And you guys have hung a lantern. You've actually put a spotlight on that once again. We have to continue to do that. I'm very interested in the recommendations, quite frankly. And not recommendations that'll be simplified, like eliminate the business tax or streamline the permit process. But how do we get there? We need the help. We need the help from the public. We need the help from each and every one of you. You talked a little bit about the roads and the conditions of the infrastructure here in the city of Los Angeles. As you well know, Joe Buscaino and I have been working on a plan. We'd like you to engage in things like that, where we can fix every street in the city of Los Angeles. There's been a lot of discussion in here for the last year and a study that was presented to streamline the permit process and merge and consolidate planning and building and safety. It's taken a seat back so it can further study functional transfers and how we can go about doing those things. Those are the things we need to do. It's easy to say that we need to eliminate the business tax. That's not enough. That's $425 million. That's the size of the fire department. So we have a roadmap to get there. We need help from the public. We need help from experts. We need help from this commission working through and navigating, quite frankly, that process. The solutions are crystal clear, but they're complicated. And that's where this body needs input and needs real work done. And so I'm very interested in what the report comes back in 90 days, not just on the solutions that are easy solutions, but a roadmap into which leads us to get those things done. Many of those take legislative actions as well from the voters and voter participation. And so we'll need help getting that done, getting things on a ballot, and then raising the money to run effective campaigns to get those things done. I do think Los Angeles is back on track. Things are going in a good direction. There's been a lot of great things done, but there's a lot of work to do. And we've got a new mayor who's doing a great job, and particularly with looking at matrix, with performance-based budgeting and initiatives so we can actually measure what's being done, how long it's taking, what are those performances, how do we apply that to the budget process. I'd like to see that addressed in some of the solutions as well, and how we can shed some light into what things we should adopt going forward in this new budget to ensure the mayor's direction on that is achieved. And so, again, I wanted to thank you for putting all this together. I look forward to the report in the next 3 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Labange.
Hey, thank you very much. I have a technical question. If you were a headline writer, would you have written L.A. facing grim future?
What we did was to try to take an assessment of where we are, where we go from here. If
Right.
we all
But if you were an editorial or a headline writer,
no, I think our future's bright.
yeah, absolutely.
I agree with Austin. No.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
wrong.
So that's a real key thing. We have to say we do have great opportunity, but we have great challenges. And I think looking at all this thing, Mr. Fleming, I think you used to say it often, boroughs. And members, I talk about this from the sense of public services. When they come into my district and do some street paving, fairly quickly they got to go over to Mitch's district and do some, and then they'll go over to Mr. Weezar's district. If we do it in a regional form, whether the West Valley, East Valley, Central City, East Side, South Side, whatever it is, then, and I call it in a positive way, the team, which is a large team of many people and intricate parts and paving equipment that has to move place to place. Instead of jumping to jumping, the regional approach to that is so key on public works. So I'm looking forward to meeting with you to articulate that. And I absolutely believe that clean streets means people say someone cares about the neighborhood. And our streets are not as clean as we want them to be. And I truly believe, although it may be technical or above your expertise, that street cleaning should be with sanitation. Because they clean the drains, and if you get the guy who cleans the drains cleaning the streets, it may make the ocean cleaner a long way down there. The other thing I did want to mention, Mr. President, I'm glad you articulated the gateway to the city, which is the Los Angeles International Airport, and the importance of tourism, that infrastructure, and how it connects to every neighborhood. Glad you mentioned the port and the upgrade and the combination Los Angeles, Long Beach ports, what that means to the region, and also water and power. Forget about all what you read for a moment in the newspaper. They deliver the water and power seamlessly. This morning at 5 in the darkness, I saw someone from Water and Power testing and monitoring a hole. Somewhere along the system, someone's 60 feet high in the ground getting power to Los Angeles. Let's make sure we do the right thing. There was a reason why the city of Los Angeles, in its development, had these municipal entities, the port, the airport, and water and power there. The driving force is so much, which needs correction. But let's remember the service that they do. And lastly, on education. I think you go back and forth on it. Local empowerment of schools, clusters of schools, what they could do are so important for elementary, and that partnership. Somehow there should be some more joint work with all levels of, like a Congress of elected officials, from school board members to city council members of not just Los Angeles, but all the schools at LA Unified and others, to work together on objectives, empowering our community colleges. We're trying to recruit more police officers, the men and women who will serve this force. Tyler, go to those 9 community colleges and be partner. We've got to be in bed and collaborate in a greater way. And then I think there's 26, if I remember from your report, universities or colleges in our region that make an impact. We are a great place with great challenges, and I think we could do this. I personally thank all of you. I'm sorry not all your whole team is here, but you can't say thanks enough. But since the president cut me off, I'll say it one more time. Thank you.
Mr. Bonin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Commissioners, thank you for your service, for all your hard work. Thank you for this report. And thank you for focusing on telling the truth. Thank you for reiterating and restating the truth about our rising health care and pension costs, about the structural problems we face, about the charade of claiming that we have 10,000 cops on the street, about the looming crisis of banked overtime. I'm glad you spoke of truth, and I've spent a lot of time after reading this report reflecting on it. And there's a few truths I wanted to dig a little deeper on, and one truth I thought was missing that I just wanted to enumerate. You spoke, I'm grateful you spoke very much about poverty and about income inequality here in Los Angeles. And one of the truths I think we need to acknowledge is that the ceiling keeps going up in this city, but the floor does not. We have students here, we talked about the education crisis, but I think we need to acknowledge that a student is not going to exceed in school if they go to school hungry or malnourished. A kid is not going to succeed in school if their parents aren't home to help with homework because they're working a second or third job and still making an income that's below the poverty line. You spoke about jobs and how we need to attract more and better jobs to grow the middle class, but we also need to raise those who are living in poverty into the middle class. For me, the truth is I think we need to raise the minimum wage, and I think we need to expand the living wage here in Los Angeles. You spoke a lot about development, and I think you accurately talked about a lot of the problems we have with good planning and development, particularly the lack of updated community plans. But I think there was a conventional wisdom about the battle between progress and NIMBYism that was overstated. In my experience in my district, that is sometimes, but rarely, the case. Most development projects in my district happen without controversy and without problems. There are many controversial ones in my district, but they're usually not that battle of progress versus NIMBYism. They're usually a battle of competing investments. Most of the controversial projects are not people who are trying to take a property they've bought and bring it to the highest and best use. They've bought a property and they're gambling they can get a better return on their investment by getting a variance or a zone change. And more often than not, they're competing against homeowners who have made their investment in their neighborhoods with the expectation or the hope, their gamble, that their neighborhoods will get better and not worse. And I think we do an injustice if we say this is about NIMBYism and the greater good. That's sometimes it, but it's most often not. And we need to focus on neighborhood-friendly development, and we're not going to get there if we always see it through the paradigm of that conventional wisdom. You mentioned traffic, so let me tell you the truth about traffic. The way we evaluate traffic in Los Angeles is a joke. It's a shame. We squeeze money out of developers to do some rinky-dink stuff, and we promise neighbors this will mitigate the traffic. And I don't think anybody really believes in most cases that that's what's going to happen. We use an outdated formula that measures really only the speed with which automobiles move. We don't look in our formulas at pedestrian safety or bicycle safety or the impact on neighborhoods. And we're now developing an attitude in Los Angeles that anything built near mass transit is good, even if it increases traffic. Until we start building an infrastructure that gets people out of cars genuinely, our traffic problems are going to get worse.
Michael, wrap it up.
If I could do just one last point I wanted to mention. The truth I thought was absent in the report is you enumerated so many things in Los Angeles. One that was missing was the environment. We live in a desert where we have no water. And I think one of our problems is that we do not do a good enough job recycling water or capturing our storm water or cleaning our groundwater. We have roads that reflect or that absorb rather than reflect heat. And one of the most important investments I think we can make, and a truth that needs to be told, is we need to make significant investments in sustainability and in conservation and in making us an environmentally stronger city. So thank you, Mr. President. That's the truth as I see it. I thank you for yours, and I look forward to your second report and working with you on those solutions.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. And Mr. Price.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I, too, would just like to thank the Commission for its, for its commitment and leadership in helping us grapple with some of these problems, some of these issues. They're not new, and they are always troubling. The report is sobering, and I think it's going to help us take an even harder look at some of these issues that are so very pressing citywide. Certainly poverty, unemployment, income disparity are issues that have impacted the area that I represent for decades. You know, this is not a new story. In fact, Council District 9 has the unwelcome distinction of having the highest rates of unemployment, dropouts, and poverty. Throughout the city as a whole, LA has the highest poverty rate of any major urban city in the nation. And again, sadly, my district has almost twice that level. And we have to do better. When we talk about the impact that income disparities play and the barbell economy can have on the economy, that is expressed certainly very accurately in the 9th District. We're minutes away from City Hall, but it's almost like a world of two cities, and we've got to change that. We lag far behind the rest of the city in almost every measure possible. You know, I think it's important to highlight this fact, especially this week when our city has received the Promise grant. And again, I don't begrudge the good fortune of our neighbors, nor do I question their needs. I just know that the stats are indisputable. You know, when you have a community with high unemployment, high dropouts, high poverty, low business development, that's where the need is, and that's where the focus should be. As we look at the long-term economic viability at our city, I think we need to realize that we can't continue to move forward unless the whole community moves forward. We have to be lifting all the boats, and of course our challenge is to make that happen. So again, I'd like to challenge the Commission to take a close look at these pockets of high need as you consider ways to improve the economy. There are lots of things that we need to do. Of course, we're going to be waiting quite interested in to see what suggestions come forth at the end of this 90-day period. And I'd just like to ask, and I know, Ms. Cantor, you suggested that there be some one-on-one conversations with the council, but is there some other process that's going to be in place that's going to permit you to solicit ideas, suggestions from the community at large or specific interest groups, website or a series of community meetings? How can we better engage, better partner with all aspects of our community as we come up with ideas, come up with solutions, come up with strategies that are going to help us address these problems, not just in the immediate future, but really long term as well. Again, thank you for your service, but I would like to get that response.
Councilmember Price, first of all, I can't say the 9th without saying the great 9th, because so many times I heard...
Now we call it the new 9th.
Right.
But it will be great again.
Let me just say, yes, our website is up. It is accessible by anyone. We're going to encourage people to give us ideas and to interact with us. We're going to go back to all the groups that came before us in 9 different meetings, and some of which were 2 groups to a meeting, so we've had 30, 40, 50 people testify, but also go to other groups in the community. We already have recommendations from a number of groups and folks. But yes, you're right, we need to impact and interact with the community, or we're not credible. We're not going to come up with things that are really going to make an impact. Look, we want to be practical, we want to be pragmatic, we want to give you things that are implementable, not just a pie in the sky. But we can't do anything that's helpful to you unless we have your input, the community input from groups and nonprofits as well as unions and businesses and so on, and that's what we're going to do. That's why it's going to take almost 90 days to get it done, frankly.
Again, well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. O'Farrell.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to also extend my gratitude. When this report came out, I got it electronically first, and I was so eager to read it. I printed the whole thing out and read it before I got this even. So, and I've marked it all up. You call out so many things and validate so many truths that we have all known for a long time. The nearly 12% unemployment rate, which affects my district deeply as well, the 13th. The runaway production job losses, the budget gimmicks over the years, the pension reform issues, the problem with city service delivery, the bureaucracy at City Hall stifling economic growth. We have broken systems. As sobering as this report is, I'm not depressed about it because we're in a new era. We have new city leadership, and it's a time, I think, for us to take these challenges very seriously. And I'm really big on relying on facts, statistics, and science as well, because that informs us a way forward. So I have known for a long time, since my community activism days, that the city is too often a roadblock for the immense human capital and talent out in the world that can actually serve to make the city better if we accommodate and facilitate their success in a more structured way. And I look forward to sitting down with all of you within the next 30 days, much less 90 days, so that we can dig deep together and really share some thoughts because I think this will be a real helpful impetus for all of us to work on. So I want to thank you for your work. I know it hasn't been easy, and I look forward to working on solutions and, of course, hearing your ideas in your 90-day report. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you all for your good work in this first step. In many ways, LA is a great city, and it has been a great city. And in many ways, I agree with the headline. I think what we're looking at, I don't view overly optimistically. I think there are some issues that you've identified where if we put our minds together and the tremendous brain power of this group, we can come up with a series of solutions that may be practical. There are others that have been absolutely intractable, and I don't necessarily see an easy solution to them or a solution to them. And I will be eternally grateful if you're able to help provide that. I mean, we've tried a lot of things over the years, and we've taken a bite out of the homeless problem, but if you can actually come up with a solution, I will be pleasantly surprised and will be working with you every step of that way. And the high level of poverty, we have tried various things. I don't know that we've made that much of a dent. And I am very concerned about this. I think you've done a good job in identifying all of the problems that we have, or at least many of the ones that are on the front burner. And I think it's better to have it in this kind of a document so we aren't just looking at them one at a time, we're looking at the whole picture. And in some ways it may be a little easier to resolve in the same way because a lot of these things may be interconnected as well. The one thing I would ask of you, if it's at all possible, try to deal with the practical. If there are things that you think would be a great idea, but you know there's not a chance in hell this council can ever move forward with it, try not to focus on that. It would be possible, for instance, to solve some of our budget problems if we found some way to cut all of our employees 20% in the next budget negotiations. We're not going to do that. So even if it would solve the problem, please don't suggest it. If you can give us some practical steps that we really can implement, then I think this effort will be very worthwhile, and thank you in advance for doing that.
Thank you. Mr. Fuentes.
First of all, let me begin by acknowledging Mr. Wesson's leadership on actually asking for this report. I will say that's a very brave thing to do, Mr. President, because the report, as you all sort of have drafted it, I mean, I think we can be very honest with one another. It's very pointed. It, I think, speaks to an awful lot that Los Angeles is facing, and it doesn't provide at this point, and I hope it will, some additional clarification or ideas or policy areas that we can explore to actually try to wrestle some of these issues that you all present. So I want to thank you, Mr. Wesson, for bringing this forward. It's a brave thing to do. And I equally want to thank you all for your participation and your ongoing partnership towards trying to resolve some of these challenges. You all know, and I think Mr. Koretz outlined it, these are very difficult challenges, and I'm going to disagree a little bit with Mr. Koretz. I think we ought to swing for the fences because that's what Los Angeles deserves. It's why we ran for office. It's what we're elected to do, is to swing for the fences. And I think that putting everything on the table is very helpful from a public policy perspective to be able to have an honest dialogue with our constituents. And so in many ways, I want to reserve my thanks until you all come back with the rest of your suggestions. But I will acknowledge and thank you for what you do each and every day. You were able to write a report that I think doesn't just highlight any particular area of Los Angeles success, but underscores it with understanding that success is to be measured by the success of our families in Los Angeles. You've done, I think, a very good job in helping us understand that ultimately our customer, the people that deserve our combined success, is the families, the working families of Los Angeles. So for that, I will thank you today. But I do want to say that to the extent that you can help us build upon some of the things that this council has done, I think would be equally helpful. Despite the fact that many of my, I call them affectionately the Tier 2 colleagues of mine, have only been here for 6 months, many of them have already begun to do tremendous things. Mr. O'Farrell's tax credit idea, like with TV production and trying to figure out how to incentivize that to stay in Los Angeles, as you all well know and regard in your report, highly, highly important. The idea that we're going to try to be more smart about how we measure traffic, not just by dumb vehicles, but bicycle and pedestrian traffic. Mr. Bonin has already begun changing the conversation about how we do that. Ms. Martinez, if she were here, I want to applaud her. She literally is hitting the streets hard to address crime and prostitution and human trafficking in her council district, which has been riddled with these types of challenges for as long as I remember, and I've lived in the Valley my entire time. Mr. Cedillo, obviously, and his absolute advocacy to make sure that every single family in Los Angeles is integrated into this economy, his work has been tremendous, and he maintains being an advocate for the inclusion of all residents of Los Angeles. And I can go on and on with all of the work that my individual colleagues have done, but I think it's important for us to not just look at the current problems, but how do we build on our successes? How do we move forward on all of those elements that I just described so that we can continue the forward momentum? Now, I really do think that what you've provided us and any potential future city council candidates, I think, is a real succinct list of some of the things that we need to focus on. But I say to you in your hopefully recommendations and to my colleagues, it's going to really necessitate the leveraging of really big ideas. Really big ideas. Mr. Buscaino's example of what the city of Los Angeles is doing in Jordan Downs by leveraging huge chunks of money. Now, it's difficult being one of 15 council members to be happy with seeing all of it go to one part of the city, but that's the only way we're going to have demonstrable impacts and hopefully build the leverage opportunity with all of our partners in government to demonstrate that we want to move mountains. And so it means, colleagues, potentially looking at the tax increment financing that comes down next year from what was a CRA, and not looking at it in 15 slices, but potentially looking at it as a program to be leveraged and moved in a single direction. So those are the types of recommendations that I think are going to be very salient and very exciting. But I will wrap up by saying that many of us had the opportunity to have a lunch with Rick Caruso, and he gave us a book. Dr. Glazer was there, The Triumph of the City. Ultimately, colleagues, what it is that we're trying to do here and the recommendations that you all are providing, hopefully real soon, is about placemaking, making Los Angeles livable, happy, and successful and healthy for our working families. And the business school student in me absolutely geeks out on everything that you're talking about. I welcome the challenge. Thank you for your stewardship in your respective fields, and hopefully we'll be sitting down soon enough in a regular time to be able to thank one another for the movement that we're going to make. And in some ways, Mr. President, I would suggest that we consider having a meeting of the different committee chairs that actually oversee some of these areas. I don't know if it's an ad hoc committee on Vision 2020. I don't know if it's formalized proceedings, but we're on to, I think, the continuation of solution solving. So thank you all for your participation, and thank you, Mr. Wesson, for your courage. Thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate that suggestion. I'll give it some thought. Mr. Huizar.
Thank you, Mr. President. Like everyone else here, I also, too, want to thank our civic leaders for providing this very important report, and certainly all of us are looking forward to the actual recommendations. I also want to thank President Wesson for putting this together, and the Chamber and other organizations who helped urge this as well. It is frustrating sitting here as a city leader when, for example, we see a cycle of trimming trees in our communities that takes over 12, 14 years. And even when we put the money in the budget to do it on an emergency basis, the city still can't get its act together to go out there and do its work. It's frustrating when our residents call up and ask for our sidewalks to be fixed, and we tell them we can. We can only go out there and patch them with the black asphalt, while our seniors still struggle to get over those huge hills, over those big black asphalt mountains that we're creating. And it's also frustrating to see other cities doing great things, such as San Jose, that if they want to attract a new industry or like, let's say, the biotech industry, they have places where they could locate there, and they provide them a list of incentives for them to go to their city. The city of Los Angeles is behind in many respects. But at the same time, as the Commission pointed out, we are ahead in many respects. And that's a good thing. What I'm interested in seeing is also a comparative analysis as to whether most large metropolitan cities are going through the same struggles as we are. Is it very unique to Los Angeles and all the challenges that were presented to us and the areas that we have strengths and weaknesses? Is that an overall grander view of what is happening in those most large American cities and the struggles they're going through and how they have managed through it? The report did point out some areas where New York, for example, is doing some good things in some areas in economic growth, and perhaps we could also learn from them to see and have recommendations where they're doing well. What I found interesting is that in the suggestion that bolder leadership is necessary, that I didn't see anything that talked to the organizational structure of the city. Whether our structure, the number of council members, for example, any suggestion like that, that would better allow us to perform our duties no matter who is here. But I will say this, and no disrespect to my previous colleagues that I served with on this council, I think as a whole, this is one of the best councils as a whole that I've seen put together. We have a lot of new blood, energy, enthusiasm, and there was some talk before, to speak quite frankly, about the entry of people from Sacramento, the former legislators, and some people were alluding that that was a bad thing. At first, I bought into that, and let me tell you, it's been a good thing for this city. They bring a lot of experience, wisdom, and in our discussions and problem solving, I've seen a lot of more innovation and problem solving that we have in some time. So I do think that what Mr. Fuentes put that light bulb, just to mention that I do think we have some very good leadership, talented leadership here. We're open-minded. We welcome all suggestions. I think we're ready to roll up our sleeves and continue doing the hard work that's necessary. Finally, in doing this work and the frustration that often comes with trying to serve some of the most basic needs, our budgetary issues, like I said, need to look at more in depth. All metropolitan areas looked at this. Was it a management issue for us? How do we solve this issue? One-time solutions, one-time problem solving. Did other cities do this as well? I think that comparative analysis is something that would be important for me to see in the recommendation. So thank you so much. This is very much needed. When I served on the Board of Education, it wasn't until civic leaders started getting involved and really started asking the tough questions that the district started to reform itself, and I think we're beginning to see that here. Thank you so much.
Okay, now I'd like to call on Mr. Krikorian, who's done a phenomenal job in pointing us in the right direction. Mr. Krikorian, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you to all of you. Let me just join in the chorus of thanks, not only for the report that you've prepared, but for each of you for your leadership of this city. Because every one of you has been actively engaged with the political leadership of this city for many, many years, long before I've been sitting at this desk. And so all of you have been in the trenches in addressing these same issues that are cited in this report along with us for many, many years. And so I want to thank you for the leadership that you've shown, each of you have shown to our city, and for giving us a document that allows us to continue the conversations that we've been having here in this building for a number of years about some of the challenges that you've identified in here. But because you all have been so engaged in our civic process as well, you all know that many of the challenges that are identified in this report, and one of my disappointments actually in A Time for Truth is that it doesn't really distinguish very clearly between those issues that are failures of this city and those issues that are challenges of this city. Because we know that Los Angeles, for example, is the largest city in California, and when you talk about jobs creation, it's very important for us to talk about that. But to Mr. Koretz's points about practicality, we know that we struggle with a public education system throughout this state that has been starved for 30 years in California, that has been underfunded to a point that is a national embarrassment. We know that the public education system in this state that used to be the envy of the nation when I was in public schools in California, when people from throughout America came to Los Angeles to study our public schools, we know that that public system has been systematically starved for over 3 decades, and none of that has anything whatever to do with city government. But it's a challenge that we have to face. It's a reality that we have to face, and I appreciate you raising that. We talked about some of the environmental and regulatory challenges that we have in jobs creation in this report, and I know many of the people around this horseshoe have been working very hard on that very issue. And yet, we also know that Christopher Thornburg recently reported that the economic vitality of the city of Los Angeles is exceeding the economic vitality of the county of Los Angeles. So when your report cites, for example, Fortune 500 companies that are leaving the city, I don't know if they're leaving the city to go to Burbank or if they're going elsewhere. But if they were going to Burbank, that would really be an indication to me that we have a problem in the city of Los Angeles in retaining Fortune 500 companies because of things that are happening specific to the city of Los Angeles. But when, for example, First Interstate Bank is acquired by a Bay Area-based banking system, it kind of makes sense that First Interstate Bank's headquarters would no longer be in Los Angeles. When ARCO is acquired by British Petroleum, it kind of makes sense that they wouldn't be headquartered here anymore. So, you know, I think we have to look at all of these issues, but to the point of practicality, I would hope that the next report focuses on specific regulatory challenges in the city of Los Angeles that will make it easier to create jobs and do business here. That's what I'm looking for. And in that regard, this report presents the inherent challenges of jobs creation here, for example, with traffic. We can't, on the one hand, say we want to create more development and create more jobs and create more housing and bring more people in here without realizing the fact that all of that means more traffic as well. So in some respects, I hope that you'll acknowledge that the problems in here and some of the suggestions in here are, in some respects, because they're inherently mutually exclusive, that is exactly the challenge that we have in solving them. There's a great deal of discussion about pensions in here, and yet we have members of the Commission who have been strong advocates for our public employees, and we also have members of the Commission who have been fierce advocates for dramatic changes in our public pension system. And so the report reflects that pension costs and health care costs are rapidly increasing, and yet it chides us for not doing more to support our public employees by providing greater funding for our pension system. Now, I'm not sure which way we need to go on that. Do we need to, and maybe the Commission discussed this in one of its meetings, and it's not included in the report, should we cut pensions or should we pay more for pensions? Which is it? And that's the inherent challenge that we have to face. So when it comes, and then if I may, Mr. President, I don't know if others are on the queue, but I want to talk a little bit about the budget as well.
Well, you know what? Why don't I bring you back to close everything?
Okay.
And then let me go to, so I'll put Mr. Krikorian back on the board. I'll go to Mr. Cedillo now, followed by Blumenfield, then back to Krikorian. Mr. Cedillo?
So, Paul, you get to be the closer. Paul, you get to close this. You get to bring it all together and wrap it up for us. So, thank you. First of all, Mr. President, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for having the courage to convene this body. Not a probably politically smart thing to do, to gather all the civic leaders and ask them, tell us what our problems are. You might have that conversation with your wife or your family, but not something you want to do at City Hall with all the civic leaders. So thank you for that courage. Obviously, thank each and every one of you for taking the time away from your business, your duty, your responsibilities to be great citizens of the city. I thank you first for your candor, and I mentioned that to you. I really appreciate how honest you've been about this discussion and the challenges that confront us. I'm pleased to hear, as I said to you, Mickey, someone talk about the fact that we have so many problems related to poverty. That is so important for us and for the city. In Sacramento, I was in a work group with Robert Reich, and constantly, this is, he's got this published every month in the New York Times or some journal. This disappearing middle class is a real challenge for the city, for the state, and for the nation. And so it's a good focus for the proposals that should follow. I think the fundamental question that you asked is, who is the city for? And we have to go back to basic services. Who is this city for? Who do we serve? What are the basic services from government that people should expect? And then how do we pay for them? A very basic question that we have to ask. As Mr. Fuentes talked about, we prepared for council, we came together. It really is, how do we make a city that functions and where people are happy? Not everybody's going to be equal. Not everybody is equal. But everybody has an equal right to know that their city's going to deliver basic services to them, to their side of the town, in the same manner, with the same rigor, with the same competence. And so that's the question that you've given us. Of course, we have to figure out who pays. There has to be a structural fix. There have been things that have taken place that we need to notice. There was this VLF that existed, and it was very popular politically, and it was part of a recall. And guess what? We're $400 million short every year. We have to look at that. Governor Schwarzenegger said it was his biggest mistake in terms of dealing with the economy. Susan Kennedy, his chief of staff, said it was the same thing. It was a political response, but it wasn't a sound economic response to the challenges that confronted us. So we've got to address the structural problems, and you're presenting us with that opportunity. Pensions are very important. We have to be thoughtful. We've got to look at the cause, but we cannot forget people have invested to work for the city. They made a choice coming out of high school. They made a commitment. We've made a commitment to them, a promise, that after their 30 or 40 years of service, that they're going to have the same quality of life when they leave. And these are all the boomers. The whole nation is confronted with this. Boomers are leaving the workforce. And are we going to be prepared for that in terms of who will follow them into the workforce? And secondly, will they have the quality of life? We've gone from 90% of the nation being on defined benefit, we're down to 11%. It's a choice that we're making. It's a fiscal choice, but we also have to think about what's going to happen about the quality of service and quality of life for the entire nation. And so Los Angeles has an opportunity to lead on that, to take this balanced approach, to think about the business community. I'm happy to see a conversation about the diversity of the city. All boats must rise, and we've got to focus on the immigrant boat. We've got to figure out how people learn English, and we all have one language here in the city, right? We're for that. But we need classrooms. We need instructors. We need places that people can go and do that. But we also need to figure out a way how to capture the entrepreneurship of immigrants. They are amazing. They'll start a micro business. If you give them a tortilla and butter, they're going to have a stand outside in a second, right? They'll make a route. They'll go sell. I mean, they are extraordinary. There are people opening our doors as we go into restaurants that are authors in their own countries, that are doctors and dentists and engineers and professionals. We've got to capture that. We've got to figure out a way of integrating that into the mainstream,
wrap it up,
into our economy. Let me throw a pitch for myself, Mr. President. We've got to clean the city up. I think fundamentally we need to clean this city up. We've got to have paved streets, safe sidewalks. It has to be clean. This should be across the board. We've got to change the culture of the people who live here, but we need to change also our infrastructure. We've got to fix the lighting. These basic things can be transformational, both for the business community and the people who live here. Finally, Mr. President, I see this as a call for leadership, and I thank you for making that call. I think the leaders are here. We are the leaders we've been waiting for, and that we simply need to be decisive. We need to do what's right, not what's popular, as you've done in this instance, Mr. President, and we need to do it now. I thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bloomingfield.
Thank you very much. And building on what Mr. Cedillo said, I view this is a challenge. You're throwing down the gauntlet in many ways, saying it's time to tell the truth, and there's a lot of truth being told here. But it's not just a grim story here. It is an exciting challenge that we all, not just the people around this horseshoe and the people behind that desk, but the people in the greater Los Angeles community need to take on. And so I appreciate you raising it that way. And I also want to echo, I really appreciate the President asking for this truth to be told, because that represents to me a new way of thinking, a way that we're saying we want to lay all our cards out on the table. LA has had a lot of problems in the past, warts and all. Let's not be scared of it. Let's move forward with it. I did a panel last night with our city controller about this Control Panel LA, where we're trying to get all the data on the city out there, warts and all, so that the public can see it. Because the only way we're going to really move forward is if we do lay our cards out on the table and we get our collective minds behind it. So I'm very excited about that possibility and what you're bringing to the table and the time that you've put forward on this. I also want to mention, I didn't see, there are a couple of things I want to mention. There wasn't a lot of talk about technology in this report. And I'm a big believer in, technology is not our salvation, but ultimately, how do you do more with less? Moore's Law. The only way you do that is oftentimes through technology, not for technology's sake, but for all of the points about making government more accessible, more transparent, and more effective. And at the end of the day, we're sort of 3 generations behind, not only in our traditional technology, but the technology that we use to serve the city, the way that we do all of our services, the non-high-tech technology, but the basic stuff, the way we go about it. And I really believe that in order to get to that next level, we can't just transition through the way other cities may have developed. We have to take a quantum leap. We have to basically leapfrog a generation of technology and make this into a new 21st century Los Angeles. And I'm not just being literal about the technology, but metaphorically about all of the things that we do. So I want us to think about that and how we can do that. The other piece I wanted to have you think about also in this report is you talked about the regional impact and how we have to be connected with other regions, and we're not doing a good job of that. I would want to add to that the way that we interact on multiple levels of government with the city, the state, the county, and the federal government. Because if we keep looking at our problems in our own silos, as innovative as everyone in Los Angeles is, we can't solve our problems alone. We have to do it in concert with the federal government. That may mean a new type of loan program. In terms of the state, I'm pushing an effort to lower the threshold for infrastructure bonds so that we'll have more power here on the local level. But part of our solutions is coming from within, but part of our solutions has to be how do we partner and build coalitions without and on different levels of government. So I wanted to add that in as something to think about in this next round as we go, and also to urge you to think about priorities too. It's our job as elected leaders to determine certain priorities, but I would love to have the collective wisdom of you all talk about priorities in terms of the bang for the buck. You've identified a lot of really critical problems in this book, but which ones, if we had to solve 1, 2, or 3 of them, which one of those problems would have the biggest impact on our economy? And that's not just a prioritization based on the values of our community. That is a cold, hard numbers and look and the kind of analysis that you all can really do. So I look forward to that, look forward to working with you, look forward to figuring out how this all fits in with the budget. I know Mr. Krikorian is going to talk about that, and in fact I would love to have an even greater discussion about this perhaps in Budget Committee. I don't know what the procedures are if we refer it to Budget Committee, but I like the fact that you have started this conversation, or you've shown a spotlight on it, because it is the conversation that we need to be having in this city to move us forward. So thank you for what you're doing, and I look forward to partnering with you in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Blumenfield, and be assured this will be in Budget and Finance Committee. Mr. Krikorian, to close.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. On both scores, I didn't realize that it was going to come to Budget and Finance. That'll allow a little longer discussion about some of the points I want to briefly touch on today. So thank you for that. But if I can just come back to the jobs issue for a minute, because I think Mr. Blumenfield's point, and this was a point that was importantly made in the report as well, was interagency cooperation and how we can work together better as a city with other agencies. Critically important point. And it's a place where the city and some of those other agencies has badly failed over the years. The conflict between city and county, for example, the relationship between the city and our state government has been poor, to say the least, over the years, and that's been to everyone's detriment. I think when it comes to jobs growth in particular, one of the things that was cited in the report, for example, was the loss of film and television production jobs. And I was the author of the California Film and Television Production Tax Incentive. Mr. Fuentes, when he was in Sacramento, carried a bill, successful bill, to extend that. And California has been fighting against the tide to keep those jobs in California as a whole. And it's clear that we must do much more as a city to encourage our state government to do more to keep those jobs here. And that's going to be a critical element of our economic future. Likewise, the report talked a great deal about delays in getting big projects done. But at the same time, we're also cognizant, the report is cognizant, we're all cognizant of the need to balance getting big things done and taking into account the needs of our neighborhoods and our communities who are so often impacted by, and our larger environment that are impacted by those projects. And striking that balance is never easy, and it's made even more complicated and a longer process because of the state environmental regulatory process and other things that we have to deal with because of state law. So again, getting back to the practicality, I hope that there are some suggestions on how we as a city can deal with some of those larger issues, but more specifically, what can we do about the things that are within our control to do. Now, I just want to make a couple of points on the budget. Obviously, everybody knows, has known for a long time that the budget challenges the city has faced have been extraordinary over the last 5 years, like most cities in the country. And it has been, since I walked into this chamber, it has been the dark cloud that has hung over the city, to be sure. But I think it's also important to note that when I joined the council in January of 2010, the CAO was projecting a budget deficit for this fiscal year of $1.1 billion. And because of the sacrifice of our public employees, because of the work of this council and the mayor, because of cost reductions that have happened in all of our departments, because of the loss of employees that we've had, making this now the smallest workforce that we've had since Tom Bradley was mayor of the city. Because of those things, that $1.1 billion deficit has been eliminated to about 75 or 80%. So we've made significant strides in addressing that fundamental problem. Work is not done, and the work will continue over the coming years, to be sure. But I think it's important to note that that progress has been made, rather than making some, more value-laden kind of general observations about the state of the budget. I do also want to point out that some of the things that were stated in here as problems in the budget, increase in the TRAN, for example, the increase in the TRAN has allowed us to prepay into our benefits program, which has resulted in significant budgetary savings. And in fact, that savings and that decision, that strategic decision, has led to praise from credit rating agencies because we do a better job than any other city in the country in doing that. That was enabled by a greater reliance on the TRAN. So that isn't exactly a problem. It was actually a strategic decision that was made that created a budgetary solution. The report also cites to a significant amount of one-time revenues that were relied upon in the budget, and that's certainly true. The difference is that now, compared to prior years, one-time revenues are used for one-time expenses, which is an especially appropriate thing to do, whereas in past years the city has failed to do that and has relied year over year over year on one-time one-time revenues to cover over the structural deficit problem that we've had. So I think, again, we ought to, if it's a time for truth, we should also acknowledge that part of the truth is a dramatic degree of progress in what has been a nagging problem for the city for many years. And I guess if this is coming to Budget and Finance, there's going to be some other things I'm going to want to cover. Oh, the one other thing I want to touch upon now is the subsection of the report that talks about pie-in-the-sky revenue forecasts. And, we certainly want to be as precise as we can with revenue forecasts. And as I'm looking at the last decade of revenue forecasts, there have only been 3 years where the revenue forecast has come up short. And 2 of them were fiscal year 07-08 and 08-09, when the economic world collapsed. So I don't think it's been the practice of this city to have pie-in-the-sky revenue forecasts. In fact, if you compare forecasts to actuals, it's been pretty darn good. And that has been what's enabled us to, while we've been reducing that budget deficit by almost 80%, we've also been able to bring our reserve fund to over 6.5%, the highest it's ever been in any of our lifetimes, at the same time that we've created a budget stabilization fund of over $65 million, at the same time that we've had those budget reductions. So I appreciate the work that's gone into this. I appreciate having the opportunity to talk about some very, very hard subjects that are not easy to resolve. And I'm looking forward to the next round, because those practical solutions that you've mentioned are coming and that Mr. Kretz requested are, I think, exactly what this city needs. Because ultimately, the solution to all of these problems of the budget and otherwise is getting people back to work, creating more jobs, creating more good jobs, and not the low-paying jobs, creating good jobs, making it a more attractive place to do business here. That's what our focus of attention should be on right now as a society. City government, yes, but also the philanthropic community, also labor, also the business community, the education community. That needs to be our singular focus, and I thank you for getting us on that track.
Thank you for closing, Mr. Krikorian. And I'll just say to each and every one of you again, I do appreciate the work that you've done. But this is an amazing council, and it has a track record of dealing with tough issues. This council has never ducked an issue. So I have every confidence that and again, we have a track record of doing the things that we need to do to put this city on the right track. And I agree with every member here that we welcome the challenge, this call to arms, and we will do the job that the people of this great city hired us to do. With that said, we look forward to your return in 90 days. And at that point, Mr. Krikorian, we will be sending this to Budget and Finance. Thank you guys very much. Madam Clerk, I think it's time for us to go into the special. So if you could please call the roll. If we could temporarily adjourn, temporarily recess, and then we'll go into the special.
Blumenfeld, Bonner, Buscaino, Cedillo, Englander, Fuentes, Weezer, Caress, Krikorian, Labange, Martinez, O'Farrell, Parks, Price, Weston, 12 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
All right, let's begin. Before us is item 6. Do I have hurry? Okay, if you guys could just move off. Okay, now we've already had a hearing on this, but what I would like, and Holly, you please sit down, but I think all I want is for you to just say, what is the city's responsibility and exactly what is before us today?
Sure. Harith Trivedi from the City Attorney's Office. As you know, or you may know, the LAUSD board has a vacancy, and the board acted a couple days ago to request an election be held to fill that vacancy. The city has a very limited role here. Our charter does govern LAUSD elections and provides that once the board makes the decision as to whether to have an appointment or an election, the city carries out that function because the city runs the boards, the LAUSD's elections. So our role here is to adopt, before you today, is to execute on that, is a ordinance that would set the election dates and the procedures for candidate filing, consolidate the election with the June 3rd, 2014 state primary election, which is already held, and some other particulars.
Thank you. And Holly, this is basically the soonest we could do it and most cost effective?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So there are no members on the queue. If we could open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
And this is forthwith. Now, if we could adjourn the special meeting and go back into the regular meeting. We'll go to item number 1. Luis Valadez, Mr. Walsh, Mr. Sachs, and Mr. Herman. But Luis, please come forward. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Mr. President and City Council. I'm here on the issue I had with cleaning up my yard. I've complied, and they say they want to fine me, and all I'm asking from the City Council is to have mercy on the fine that they impose on me. That's all I got to say.
And the address? The address?
The address is 3842 Oak Hill Avenue, Los Angeles, California. That's where I reside, 90032.
Okay, thank you. I'll defer to Mr. Huizar.
And on this item, City Clerk, is what item? Number
1C.
1C. Yes, we discussed with staff, and there is a lien on that for a little over $2,000, I believe. A little over $2,000, and staff, after negotiations, has agreed to reduce this to $2,000, and that the department and property owner work on a payment plan pending that the owner submit proper paperwork. If not, the original amount of the lien should be imposed. If we can approve this item with that amendment, please.
Okay.
Do I need a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Walsh and Mr. Sachs, and I thought I saw Mr. Herman. And Mr. Herman, please come forward. Yes, Mr. Sachs.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org. As you know, previously, with these liens for nuisance abatement, you would print the name of the owner that has to pay the lien. Because I started getting up here and mentioning the names of the owners. Take a look. They have now removed the names of the owners to prevent embarrassment to their political contributors from the agenda. So we have here $3,681, 8212 North Encino Avenue. Whose money was anonymous? North Laurel Canyon, anonymous, $6,000. North Lolita Avenue, $576, anonymous. This is another small problem in a city that is in decline, as the illustrious Mr. Cantor said earlier. HollywoodHighlands.org.
Okay, and again, Mr. Sachs, I apologize. Why don't you come forward?
Yes, thank you, sir. And like a cat, you're running out of 9 lives with that detail. Thank you. Couple things, and again, maybe back to the roots of your commission here, because you incur inspection costs and violation costs and hearing costs for this Part of your committee was revenue sources to alleviate some of the problems in the city. And I know I've come up here a few times and mentioned if you have the ability to do code violations for REAP programs, why don't you have the same ability to do code violations on foreclosed properties, in which you would be getting $1,000 a day from the owners of blighted foreclosed properties? And you look at the balance of the revenue. And this is a major problem. You're looking for solutions. There's a solution right there. You have the manpower. You have to make the violations. You have to have the hearings. So why don't you collect $1,000 a day instead of this chump change you get from REAP violations? You can still do both of them, just an allocation of manpower. That's all it takes. And there's been several articles, and yet the council has neglected to act on any, not one bank, not one property has been cited for the blighted conditions of foreclosure in 3 years. New leadership, old leadership, same
Mr. President,
problem.
he's not talking about these liens.
Okay, close. All right, thank you, Mr. Sachs. Mr. What do we have on it? Mr. Herman, please come
Good afternoon,
forward.
Los Angeles. I'd put my mask on for you, but I'm unable. We're talking about Building and Safety Department report for liens for nuisance abatement. Liens that Mr. Jose Huizar's district has continually placed the hardship of these liens, these violations and citations, exactly what the commission of Mr. Cantor was explaining. How do you expect to get people such as Mr. Valdez Lewis in item C at 3842 North Oak Hill Avenue for the $2,515.11, Mr. Huizar? This gentleman's lived here for 45 years, and the city building safety goes out and says, clean this mess up, remove all this debris. The gentleman's trying. Look at his age. And you expect him to jump on a dime just because you want to generate an income for this city, Mr. Huizar?
Mr. President, he should speak to the council as a whole.
I'm speaking
No,
about
wait.
item
Hold his
C.
time.
Item
We're
C.
not going to debate if you are speaking to the issue or not. You were instructed to speak to the issue. Please do that to the item. If not, then I'll call on the next speaker. So go on.
My First Amendment rights here is to talk about the liens, the way the bamboozling building and safety, this local government hinders you, Los Angeles, you, all of you on these citations here in this booklet, on the agenda, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's page after page of citations against your residents, your constituents, and yet you want them to pay on bogus liens for bogus citations? This is a bunch of nonsense. This shows you the dim-wittedness of how local government attempts to create a revenue. All this money from the liens goes into the general fund and gets squashed where? Back into your padded wallets.
Great, thank you very much. I believe that concludes the speaker cards on this item. We have a card? Oh, it was submitted after we'd started the item, apparently. So, okay, with that, we'll go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Great, thank you, Madam Clerk. Next
And-
item, please.
And just for the record, item 1C was adopted as amended.
And I'll go ahead. That's adopted as amended, correct.
Item 2 calls special for cards.
Mr. Walsh, followed by Mr. Sachs.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org, HIGHLANDS. Plenty of stuff is up there now, or just go to J. Walsh Confidential. Here we're talking about easements for street purposes. Now, that sounds really nice, but let me tell you what happens. And this happened on my block, on Yucca. The landlord across the street wanted to use a semicircle that was built in there, which was city property, as a private parking lot. So he got Eric Garcetti to put an easement in there, paid, as they say here, it's $2,000, paid for the easement, paid, and then ended up with the property being transferred from the city to private property. It's done all the time in this city. The property was worth to the landlord across the street at Yucca and Argyle about $500,000. But he made campaign contributions and got it. And I just want to say to all the landowners out there, all the property owners.
Mr. President, he's not talking about this
I'm
easement.
talking about this easement. Am I talking about this easement? I'm talking about the damn easement at First Street and West. And keep your damn mouth shut, Mr.
Okay,
City
so
Attorney.
again, if the city attorney is going to say that, the city attorney is going to weigh in. He has the ability to do that. So now we're not on subject.
What garbage you are. Holly, not you, Mr. Englander. This trash here that stops me out, he's waving his hand. You're vomitous. HollywoodHighlands.org.
Right.
And you are an anti-Semite.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sachs. Pass? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, got it. Thank you very much. All right, so that concludes this item. We'll go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Thank you very much. Next item, please. Does that clear the desk? We've got the special. Yeah, that's fine. I can do it here. That's fine.
Mr. President, a special one motion has been circulated, and the city attorney will speak to the findings.
Okay, if you could speak to the findings.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will recite the facts as presented to me by the maker of the motion for the council's consideration of the adequacy of the findings. Since the posting of today's agenda, a State Assembly Committee amended AB 1147 regarding required notices posted at massage establishments. The League of California Cities has now announced its support of AB 1147. Immediate action is required for the city to state its position in support of AB 1147 before the Assembly Business and Professions Committee takes it up next Tuesday. Council must first make findings pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.2 before considering the substantive motion.
Great, thank you very much. Any speakers on the queue? Mr. Krikorian.
I've just been handed this now, Mr. President. I just wanted to try to understand what the sense of urgency is that would require this to be done by a special one as opposed to being agendized for consideration by our Rules and Elections Committee and then come before the floor.
Yes,
on the findings, if I could better understand what the urgency is, that would be helpful to me.
It is up for committee in Sacramento early next week, and this is the League of Cities has asked us to do this as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Seeing no other speakers on the queue, go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes, 1 no.
Okay, thank you very much. That item passes. And we'll go ahead and...
The findings.
Oh, on the findings. I'm sorry, correct. That'll be on the findings. Now we'll go ahead and open the roll on the actual item. Okay, Mr. Walsh, come on up. Mr. Walsh, well, let's go ahead and put 1 minute on the clock since I already called you up, although you've used your time up for the meeting, but since I called you up and you made the trek.
Okay, special items don't count for the 5-minute
They
limit.
do because it's on the actual agenda, not on the special.
Let me tell you, special items, I just want everyone to know, Mr. Brown who's responsible for this is not Jerry Brown. It's Ralph Brown from Modesto, California, long dead, but still celebrated. This issue here should have been deliberated. It should have been on the agenda. One city council person actually voted against hearing it, and he was absolutely right. They put these things off calendar, they bring it in here, they push it forward, and you have no idea what they're doing. The reason we have the new Brown Act is because you went back there 20 years ago and gave yourself a salary increase in the back. HollywoodHighlands.org for what's happening. Long live the Brown Act. The only reason I'm able to speak here is because of Ralph M. Brown, Senator of Modesto.
Thank you very much. So with that, we'll go ahead now and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Okay, we'll send that forthwith as well, without objection. Okay, that takes us to general public comment.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Herman, followed by Mr. Walsh, followed by Mr. Sachs.
The most reprehensible ignorance and mischievous unrighteousness is the wrong that Mr. Huizar, Building and Safety and Housing Authority has done to all of you in Los Angeles. To all the families affected by Building and Safety and Housing Authority's action, you are wrong. And you should be investigated by the Federal Bureau of Investigations, the FBI, for your continuance to interrupt the lives of citizens of Los Angeles. And yes, and what did Mr. Corrett say earlier in his little topic? Simplify. Let us simplify things. No, you cannot simplify anything in Los Angeles because as the commission report on item 4 said, your actions speak louder than your actions of work. Your work ethics, from my point of view and from the citizens sitting in here, is that you failed. Because now you have to build a budget, create not a deficit, but create a budget ceiling of income so that we, the taxpayers, can live better in Los Angeles. So do not come to Los Angeles. You're not safe. Because after this commission report, you will read the facts of what our council, our elected officials did to all of you in Los Angeles. Made us pay higher taxes, ruined the economy in Los Angeles, and yet still sit here laughing about a deficit that they can't maneuver, let alone create an idea to correct. So to all of you who are responsible, outrageous, and in your lunacy of a bad deficit, you are accountable for your actions.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org. I see we have a rare occasion of a child in the audience, so I will give you the G-rated version. Okay, I hope you heard what Mickey Cantor said. 40% of the city of Los Angeles is living in poverty. Living in poverty. You heard what he said. And with the Cantor Commission, he said that there was a .com. I have no idea what their, he did not mention what their website is. We want to know what the website is. I tried Cantor Commission, no way. 2020 Commission, no way. But we're talking about living in misery. That's a quote. 40% living in misery, the highest poverty rate in the United States for a major city. We need a town hall meeting, not with you people, but with Mickey Cantor running it in this building in the evening so we can talk to him because we know nothing about his mystery website. Standard & Poor's bond rating, Moody's bond rating, they are now, we understand, because of the Cantor report, decided to downgrade you. You will see that will happen. The Cantor Commission should have presented a slideshow. They really didn't go and run down their, the state of the city. It's on in the story. Okay, grim future, even the LA Times sounds like John Walsh. But what are you interested in? Only one thing, a $3 billion bond issue for cleaning up the sidewalks. No, that's the lowest priority. Let's get rid of that. We want 100%. LAFD, did you hear what they said? The worst, they're below average when it comes to fighting response. Below average. That's what Mickey Cantor said. We don't hear it here. You're the good news bears versus the bad news bears. For more of the information, HollywoodHighlands.org. Go there now.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Arnold Sachs. Again, I come back in front. This is from yesterday's LA Times, January 9th, 2014. Standoff over DWP draws subpoenas. And I'll quote here. There's been no public accounting of the nonprofit spending since their creation more than a decade ago. But there's been no public accounting of how they've raised their funds. And that's really what nonprofits do. They tell how they raise their funds. Well, they raise their funds out of public's payments for utilities. You know, they have a word for that in law enforcement. It's called embezzlement. When you take public money and use it for a private investment or a private without any authority, it's called embezzlement. How can that possibly happen? Unless, of course, there's some kind of authorization from the city council 10 years ago. Which brings me to the other problem. And the best news that you heard in the meeting regarding LA's future came from Mr. Wesson. He mentioned LA.
This is general public comment, so it's items that were not on the agenda.
LA 2000. Problems discussed in 1988 when Mr. Fleming was on the board. So let's have a comparison between what those problems were and the new problems in the new commission. And in addition, although the new commission is going to recommend solutions, they're not going to recommend costs. And I can tell you from going to the County Board of Supervisors that they've had two commissions with the jailhouse violence and Department of Children and Family Services, and no costs have been involved, just solutions. And unless you discuss costs, we have a problem, LA.
Great, thank you very much. Brian Barajas, followed by Richard Robinson.
Okay, I think it was on Wednesday, January 8, 2014, Elizabeth Warren in the Banking Committee, she asked the panel, will Dodd-Frank or the Volcker rule be sufficient to break up the banks that are too big to fail? Now, all of the panels said no. One of them said, hell no. Now, when we talk of laws, when we speak of laws, we speak of constitutional government, and we don't have that. When we're dealing with financing, we don't have the law which deals with financing. So we go back to the law, the principal establishment of the Glass-Steagall Act. The collapse of Wall Street, shall we say, the collapse of the United States, therefore, in 1929, you have to understand we didn't have government. Not until we established a government form, which is the embodiment of a Glass-Steagall law. The Glass-Steagall Act was removed in 1999. Then the collapse. First the bubbles, then the collapse. We don't have any form of reliance on people who can initiate acts of justice within the government or the American people in general. When we get back to the principle of Glass-Steagall, the principle that we have to abide by, when we get back to that, you can see that all of the problems, And people keep saying it's about the money. It's not about the money. The problem is that we have a force around the world, an imperial force, and they're willing to murder people. And that's a fact.
Michael? Oh, go ahead, please. Followed by Michael Carrion, Michael Hubman, and Wayne.
Mr. President, members, I was asked by an operator aboard a Metropolitan Transportation Authority coach what is soul. Sir Teilhard de Chardin, the French philosopher, with his tongue in his cheek, as usual, he said there seems to be something there. I related to Grace, the operator, that personal experience I had. I'm 73 years of age. I'm a celibate, drug-free, alcohol-free, smoke-free, gambling-free. My conscience, I like to think, is clear. I don't see pink elephants. So, 1997, I remember the year because it was when I took Mr. Bradley to see Clear and Present Danger at Mann's Chinese Theater. But I was on an Amtrak train. Grace, I felt a pressure on my shoulder. I thought it was strange because the door didn't open. I was sitting in the back seat. I looked up. This Christian saw what is called an angelic visitation. The soul of A. Philip Randolph manifested itself in front of me. Again, let me say, I don't see pink elephants. I'm a psych student. For about 5 seconds, he walked down the aisle. The soul of A. Philip Randolph looked over its right shoulder at me, looked me dead in my eyes, and nodded its head and disappeared. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Michael Carrion. And I heard Mr. Cedillo say that we needed to clean up the city and change the culture of the people. I beg to differ with you, sir. We need to change the culture of this city council. You people got to get your act together. We elected you to do what you're supposed to do. Instead, you take your pet projects and do what you want to do. You cut me off earlier, Mr. I always have a problem mentioning your name. You have no agendas back here. So how can we know what's on the agenda? How can we get on the list? How can we handed it in too late? Another, quote, BS. It's frustrating when you come here and try to talk to people. Mr. Bonin, I tried to get in touch with his office for the past 2 months. Returning a call in a timely fashion. 60, 90 days? I don't know. What is his office's timely fashion? Out of courtesy, I've been trying to talk to his office because he's on the transportation department. You guys want to fix the city? All you have to do is be accountable. Each one of you have to be accountable to the public, and your staff members have to be accountable to you, which they're not. They're not returning calls. They're not standing up. They're not doing the right thing. You guys want to do the right thing? You guys want income in the city? Go right outside and cite all these vehicles that are parked illegally. Mainly police officers are going to work parking in the red tollway zones, yet, and Mr. Weston's a good buddy of mine, says you haven't dropped the ball. Yeah, you dropped the ball. You failed to enforce the law. It doesn't say except police vehicles. And they use the excuse, we don't know if they're in an emergency. If they pull the wool over your eyes that easy, this is a sorry city council.
Michael Hubman.
My name is Michael Waterman Hubman. I'm a human rights, civil rights, and right to share food activist. At Right to Share Food, we believe that sharing food with our brothers and sisters is a fundamental human right. Today I came in and we were talking about Time for Truth 2020 Commission. So I went to the clerk's office to get a look at it, and it hasn't been published yet. I'd like to see that. How about some other older commissions? A little bit of history. In 2008, the Center for Law and Poverty issued a report that cited the use of law enforcement to harass and otherwise go after homeless people. In that report, there was a list of the 10 meanest cities in America. Los Angeles was at the top of that list, making Los Angeles the meanest city in America. In 2009, a special report for the United Nations Human Rights Council was issued, and Los Angeles was also mentioned in that report. According to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, the 4th and 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution protects homeless persons from government seizure and summary destruction of their property. Los Angeles is firmly committed to seizing the stuff of homeless people. After losing in both district court and the Court of Appeals, the city has filed a petition for certiorari with the U.S. Supreme Court, who refused to grant cert. Laws that criminalize visible homelessness are immoral and offend our basic human instincts. They are contrary to the fundamental religious and political principles from which American people seek guidance, and their existence demonstrates that we have fallen vastly short of our religious and foundational aspirations. Thank you very much. More later.
Wayne from Encino, no longer here. Okay. Then a final speaker. This is there isn't a name here, but I believe it's on the adjourning motion in honor of Mrs. Alicia Brown, if you wanted to come up and speak.
Mr. President, thank you very much for the honor and for the moment to honor a fabulous neighborhood community advocate and a member of your great city of Los Angeles, Alicia V. Brown. Moved here from Texas in 1939. She passed away this past Sunday on January 5th at the age of 88. And Mrs. Brown, some of you may know, she has probably spent more time in this great palace of government than most of you here. She comes from our neighborhood of Solano Canyon. My name is Sarah Harris. I'm a resident of Solano Canyon, and I'm the secretary of our Historic Cultural Neighborhood Council, of which Mrs. Brown was a co-founder. She was a co-founder of the Neighborhood Council movement. And so I just thought it would be fitting in the moment of her passing to thank all of you here for all of your support and the ways in which you've allowed for the process of community and neighborhood involvement to reach your quarters here, for our voices to rise up to the occasion of actually having a level of discussion about the commitment and decision-making that happens here in this great chamber. And I would say that development and land use and the integrity of multi-generational, low-income families that have a knowledge of the place that they live, the history, and a commitment to their community is something that Mrs. Brown has always stood up for, and her moment will continue. I assure you all. I said to her, upon thinking about some of the larger development pressures that we face in our tiny little neighborhood, which is of the lowest income neighborhoods here in the city of Los Angeles, majority Cantonese speaking and Spanish speaking in Solano Canyon. We face large development pressures. I'm sure you all know the Cornfield Arroyo Seco specific plan and the Los Angeles State Historic Park. We're up against large development concerns, and you all know about them. In any event, Mrs. Brown has always made it a point that all of our neighbors should know about what's happening and should feel empowered to come and have a conversation with representatives. And at a moment when I said to her, I feel sometimes that our neighborhood and many in Los Angeles are like that last little house in the Pixar film Up, that gets cut away and flies away with the balloons because they don't want to deal anymore with the towers that are coming up around them. She said, not if I can help it. So I will leave you with that. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much, and thanks for taking the time to come and present that adjourning motion as well. That'll be the last public comment, and we appreciate that. I believe the council has items for posting and referral.
Yes.
We'll go ahead and post and refer those. Are there any announcements, colleagues? Seeing no announcements, well, please rise for adjourning motions. If I can ask everybody in council chambers as well to please rise for adjourning motions. Mr. Cedillo.
I can hardly add to what was stated about Ms. Alicia Brown, but she was also, Mrs. Brown was a lover of the arts. She was a dancer in her younger years and was also a patron of the Los Angeles Theater Academy in Elysian Park and remained supportive of the Academy throughout her years. She is survived by her husband, Dean Brown, her son, Anthony Brown, and daughters, Yolanda Olan and Rita Garcia, 7 grandchildren, and 11 great-grandchildren. Her passion and her extensive knowledge of the Solano Canyon community is without match, and she will be missed. But you heard from the community how, while she may be missed, her moment will remain. I thank you. Let me, unfortunately, continue, if I may. All of us have been involved in campaigning who are here as members. Campaigns are the great part of our democracy. Every campaign, we make our efforts to reach out to thousands of people individually. And on occasion, we meet somebody we didn't know before, someone who's special. And there's always a handful of people that we remember through a campaign like that. I was campaigning for this seat. It was a difficult campaign, very rigorous, very challenging, long days. I went to a neighborhood council meeting. I was tired. It was the end of the day. I didn't want to go. But I went, and it was incredible. It was at Rampart Police Station. It was well attended. There were young cadets who were there to talk about their youth program. It was probably one of the better neighborhood council meetings I've ever been to. And there was its leader, this very huge, big man. And it was interesting because in the Rampart area, it's a community of immigrants who also live with immigrants, and then there's more immigrants. It's amazing. They speak Spanish and then indigenous languages. And the leader there was this incredible, huge African-American man, Eddie White. And I met him, and we made our presentation. My opponent didn't show up. Been the 4th time that he reneged on a commitment. And so sometimes, as they say in leadership, it's just about showing up. And so I was very fortunate. We made our presentation. I walked out the door, and Mr. White followed me out and said, you know, we're going to work with you because you showed up, and we appreciate that. And I got to know this man who was a very loving man. His partner's here with him, his son. We're joined by them today. And he's just a great man, just a very lovable man. He fell ill recently, went to the hospital. My staff told me I was at a family wedding on Saturday. We said, go visit him and then tell him we'll stop by. We told him he'll go home on Sunday. I guess the doctors, they do what they can and didn't realize that he was going home to his Creator. And so I ask that we stand in his memory today for being a great leader of the neighborhood councils, a great leader of civic participation, a great friend, and a real Angelino, just someone who stood above all the divisions that exist in these communities. Too frequently we're broken up in labels, but his label has to be friend to all, and so I ask that we stand in his memory. Mil gracias. And then finally, speaking of great Angelinos, Carmen Zapata is one of the most was one of the most elegant persons you could ever meet. For over 6 decades, she was part of our cinematic scene. She was a pioneer and a leader in theater, and she was the creator of what's known as the Bilingual Foundation for the Arts. She has a theater in our district, and she worked to train actors and actresses. She passed at 86, but if you just Google her and you'll see her rich history in theater and in film, in television, in commercials. I got to know her supporting the foundation, and she was one of the most Renaissance persons that you would meet. She's very elegant, very articulate in both languages, very embracing, and she is going to be a tremendous, tremendous loss for this city. I ask that we close in her memory.
Thank you. Thank you for both of those. Mr. Bonin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I'd like to adjourn today in memory of a guy who was one half of one of the most enduring couples in Westchester, a real storybook romance. Alan Castman, Bud to his friends and family, passed away last month on December 19th after suffering a stroke. He was 91 years old. He grew up in Atlantic City, New Jersey, the youngest of 3 children. He graduated from UPenn and then entered the Army during World War II. He trained at Fort Benning, and he was stationed in Korea at the end of that war. Throughout his Army career, commanding officers apparently competed to recruit him for their football teams. He said he loved the Army. He compared it to the movie MASH. And he said the military was a great experience for a young man, as long as you didn't have to fight or kill someone. After the war, he attended law school at UPenn, and that's when he began dating his wife, Mary Ellen. They had known each other since childhood, and he used to carry her books to school as young as the 3rd grade. But their romance got sort of hot and heavy during his last year of law school. They married in 1948, and they drove across the country in a convertible to California in 1951, where they moved to Westchester, and Alan opened a law firm. When clients couldn't afford his services, he did it pro bono. He was always generous with his time. He was like a major civic leader, even into his 90s in Westchester. He helped found the Westchester Family YMCA and the Airport Marina Counseling Service. He was active with the Lions and the Dem Club, organized Little League and community concerts and all sorts of stuff. But he was really most known to me, because I'd known him for about 18 years, and everybody else for his total devotion to Mary Ellen and to his 3 kids. He's survived by Mary Ellen. The kids are Ken, Joan, and Ted. 7 grandkids, 2 great-grandkids. The memorial service is going to be, appropriately enough, at the Westchester Y on Sunday the 19th at 2 p.m., and the family asks that in lieu of flowers, people make contributions to that Y or to the Airport Marina Counseling Service in Alan's honor. May he rest in peace and live forever in the sunlight of the Spirit.
Thank you. Incredible, Angelino. Appreciate that. Thank you. Yes, please. Mitch.
Before I recognize my adjourning motion here, I just want to acknowledge Alicia. I had the great privilege 10 years ago when I was on the staff of my predecessor to work directly with her in the community of Echo Park in the 13th, along with neighboring communities of the Solano Canyon, on the Elysian Park Master Plan. And I got to know her grace, her intelligence, her wide respect that she enjoyed beyond Solano Canyon. She was a true giant in the community, and I just want to acknowledge her as well. And she leaves a wonderful legacy, and she really helped put Solano Canyon on the map. So it is with sadness that I acknowledge that as well. It was a great experience working with her 10 years ago. In addition to the great actress Carmen Zapata, Hollywood lost another shining star over the holidays, another actress who shattered the glass ceiling, who faced great adversity and racism, and that is the incredible actress Juanita Moore. Juanita Moore was born in Greenwood, Mississippi on October 19th, 1914 and grew up in South Los Angeles. After briefly attending Los Angeles City College, she moved to New York and joined the chorus line at Small's Paradise, a nightclub in Harlem. She also danced at the Café Zanzibar and later at the London Palladium and the Moulin Rouge in Paris. With her dance career fading, she took classes at the Actors Laboratory Theater in Hollywood and made ends meet at a chicken restaurant that was a hangout for young actors. She also earned $10 or $12 a day as a movie extra. Marlon Brando, a customer and friend, got her a spot in a crowd scene in A Streetcar Named Desire. After making her film debut in Pinky in 1949, she had a number of bit parts and supporting roles in motion pictures throughout the 1950s and 60s. However, her role in 1959's Imitation of Life won her a nomination for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress, becoming only the third African American actress to be nominated for an Academy Award in any category. She was also nominated for the Golden Globe Award for her Best Supporting Actress in a Motion Picture for that role. If you see the film, if you haven't seen the film, I urge you to. She carries the film, and she was the heart, the soul, and the conscience of that movie. Ms. Moore was also an active in theater, performing with the Ebony Showcase Theater and the Los Angeles-based Cambridge Players. She appeared on Broadway in The Amen Corner in 1965 and in a London production of A Raisin in the Sun. Juanita Moore passed away at the age of 99 on Tuesday, January 1st, 2014, at her Los Angeles residence. She is survived by her grandson, Kirk Kellican, an actor and a dancer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I'd mention just an ironic addition to Mr. O'Farrell's excellent comments on Juanita Moore. Ironically, after she had this amazing role in this movie where people were talking about how the crowds would be crying based on her incredible performance, she never really achieved another major role. But because her one great role was so prestigious, she also stopped getting the little bit parts that she had gotten before. So sadly, that was the last great part of her career, but perhaps one of the most amazing roles ever played in a film. I also have one other adjournment. Don Mitchell, who was an accomplished actor, passed away at age 70 of natural causes at his home in Encino. He was born in Houston but left home to attend UCLA, where he studied fine arts, and he was best known to the public for playing the character Mark Sanger in the TV series Ironside, which some of us may be old enough to remember, that was on from 1967 to 1975, starring Raymond Burr as Robert Ironside, the wheelchair-bound San Francisco chief of detectives. Mitchell played an ex-con who was persuaded by Chief Ironside to become his driver and assistant. During the course of the series, his character would grow to become an attorney and a judge. And it's been said that Ironside was a very important show for the African-American community because with Don Mitchell, although not the lead, he had such a strong and visible presence on the show, with the series coming out at a time when the networks were really experimenting with diversity, that it was important, and the series offered important images and messages about unity and diversity. Mitchell considered Raymond Burr to be his acting mentor, and he went on to appear in many other TV series of the time, including I Dream of Jeannie, The Fugitive, Matlock, Macmillan and Wife, and Wonder Woman, also in a number of films. He spent his retirement happily enjoying music, horseback riding, deep-sea fishing, and his friends and children. And our condolences to his friends, family, and fans.
Thank you very much. Seeing no others, that concludes the meeting, and we are adjourned. Thank you all. Have a great weekend and be safe.